I was texting another mom, she's like, I'm glad that you're sitting else like your children daughter and that's process. I'm like, yeah, it'll be me. I give a name.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a.
Well, they said.
Years in there, one huge field of their life.
It's almost
They said,
Yeah, they're just very emotional, that would be good, and I'm like,
okay.
and then they.
and then not knowing what's happening for schools, like, we didn't find out until like later on this day and stuff.
Okay. No, it's not that good. All right, I hereby call this regularly scheduled Carver County School District number 2 Board of Trustees meeting to order. Mr. Boardman, I appreciate it if you'd lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just to note on the agenda, and obviously we have people out there that want to comment and want to participate, particularly regarding the amended agenda, regarding the COVID situation and a couple of our sports teams, 3 of them actually being quarantined. And so we will do the very best we can to accommodate them, let them speak. And I guess the other thing, just in general in the meeting, speak up. So, you know, this isn't the ideal situation. Some of this just came to light. So we're here, reading the room. We'll do the best we can to accommodate everybody who wants to be heard or to hear.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, we have no presentations, recognitions. Item 4A, correspondence.
We just had the following, Wassa sportsmanship letters that we received: Dalton Peterson and Cameron football versus Farson Eden, Peyton Monroe and Cameron volleyball versus Farson Eden, Noah Rimmer, SMHS football versus Southeast, Tasia Daly, SMHS volleyball versus Farson Eden, Bryce Reed and Cameron football versus Burlington, and Taylor Kennedy, HEM versus Farson Eden. So I wanted to get that in the record. Congratulations to those students.
Thank you, Dr. Copeland. We have no hirings or resignations at this time. So item 6A, superintendent report, Dr. Copeland.
Okay, you see my report. I won't read every word. The October 2020 enrollment report is included. I believe we're down 2 students, so pretty much stable there. You see those numbers spread across the various schools in the district. Item 2, holiday concerts will be video performances that will be posted and made available to parents and any other interested community members, which is a change this year due to restraints on gatherings and distancing and so on. Item 3, the virtual 2020 WSBA annual conference. That's this coming Wednesday afternoon, Thursday and Friday. Some of you have signed up. Just be sure if you want to attend any of those virtually, it's all virtual, then you need to let Dana know if you have not. So you can sign up and then not attend, but you can't decide at the last minute to sign up. So be sure you let her know that. COVID update item 4. Some of this is just information that I was going to share. I know we have a COVID item, so I may save some of that as it relates to that particular item for later. But at present, just kind of for the record, we have 7 staff members that are currently on quarantine, either due to testing positive or close contact to a family member or other individual that's positive. And we have 62 students, the vast majority of which, of course, are those 3 teams that were quarantined. But we do have some students that are on quarantine that are not part of the teams, and they're pretty much spread across all campuses. And they're due to either a family member, immediate family member being tested positive, or them, or their close contact as deemed due to Carbon County Health, Public Health. Some of these students, just for information purposes, some of these students, their parents call us when they get a positive, and we report it, or we call the Carbon County Health, which is what direction we were given. Some of these, Carbon County Public Health calls us and tells us it's such and such as a positive, and here's the thing that you can do, the letter, I mean, that you need to send, and here are the dates and so on. They have, and some of this is repeating what Amanda Brown told us in that work session, but basically what they've told us is they've been so overwhelmed with the numbers lately that they only talk to positive. They do not do a lot of contact tracing unless it's directly related to a positive case, and or it is a congregate setting, of which schools are one of those. That's nursing homes, the prison, the jail, and so on. So it is increasing as far as the numbers of cases. The positivity rate is increasing for Carbon County. And I sent you in the board briefs the total numbers of quarantines since the beginning of the year. And I won't go through all of that, but I have those numbers, but those numbers are the ones that are current, 7 and then 62. So that's what I'll say for now, and then I'll say a couple of other comments, do a little research on expectations, requirements, whatever you want to call it, for school districts, and how to respond to these kind of quarantine recommendations / guidelines. So, one other thing that I was going to mention is WASA did send an update that's related to COVID for basketball and wrestling, and bottom line, they have put further restrictions on when we have games, basketball home games, and also wrestling matches. And basically, the change is face coverings must always be worn while in the building. Face coverings must be worn regardless of social distancing or sitting with immediate family members. Schools should consider limiting spectators to immediate family members or parents if required to allow social distance and space. Schools will develop a plan to include visiting spectators in the total number of spectators allowed by current health orders and directives. So bottom line, that last one just means we can't say no visiting. We can't say no visiting fans. We have to make some allowance for visiting fans. The face coverings is really the main thing that I saw. It's required basically of everybody in the building other than the players that are playing on the court. They also said no team dinners during the season, no pre or post game gatherings. So that just came out today. We'll make that available on the website, and I'll send copies to the board, and we'll try to get that disseminated. So more and more restrictions. One other thing that I almost forgot to mention, but I wanted to mention that we did have a state champion cross-country runner in Grant Bartlett, and then his brother Grady was runner-up. So congratulations to those individuals on that honor. So, and that's my report.
All right, thanks, Dr. Copeland. Mike and Steven are going to give us some reports. You know, we kind of stopped doing the principal reports when we were trying to get the meetings done as quick as possible to eliminate the time exposure, but that's kind of more back business as usual. So I'll ask Dr. Copeland to have them present this time. So Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. You really loud, they can't get out there.
I think this is what they're here for.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Maybe
Here
they
you.
are.
Okay, so I kind of thought that I would do something a little bit different than normally we do with the reports, and I thought I tried to think what would be the most helpful for you guys as board members. And so what I came up with is something a little unusual, but I want to talk about the different groups at a campus school and how the Smart Start plan, and remember that's our plan that the state gave us for coming back to school this fall, how that's affected them and what it does, what they have to do different each day. And so I'm just going to give you some ideas of how it's different. And I realize that it'll be a little bit different at a campus school than the other campuses, but it should be very similar as well. So
I kind of want to talk about different groups like that and give you an idea of what's going on and how it's been implemented now that we're kind of a quarter and a half basically into the school year. And I will say that it was a little rough at the beginning, but it's been smoothed out. And I think, at least for our campus, we are in a pretty good spot and it's kind of become our daily routine. But I want to give you some ideas of what is different and how much extra every group is doing to keep schools open. So I want to start with bus drivers. Okay, so what do they do different? They have to wear a mask whenever a student gets on or off the bus. And that doesn't seem like a big deal, but most of our bus drivers wear glasses. And you know what that's like when you're trying to do that. So we kind of came up with when the kids get on and off, that's when they have to have the mask on. They don't drop students off when they get to the school anymore. It's only one bus at a time for us. So they have to wait in the bus lane until it's their turn. There's only 3, so it's not bad, but that's kind of one of the things they do. Used to be that they disinfected and cleaned the buses every day. Now they do it after every trip, right? The kitchen staff. The kitchen staff, we changed their hours, and it used to be that we tried to do breakfast before school, and so it didn't disrupt the educational part of the day. Now what we do is we have our kitchen staff come a little bit later, and we serve breakfast in the classroom at the end of first hour. And because of the COVID relief funds, we serve breakfast to all K-6 students, and then whichever secondary students order it. So at the beginning of first hour, secondary students can say yes or no, they want breakfast. And then our kitchen staff makes those, puts them in bags, and by the end of first hour, which is roughly 50 minutes after we start school, they deliver it. And we had a little bit longer first hour at the beginning because we just weren't sure how it was going to go, and we had an hour. But we found that we were able to kind of streamline things and get it back to about a 50-minute class period, which is what we typically have been running at Academy School. So that's worked pretty good. But like I said, the kitchen staff, they have to take breakfast and serve it in the classroom. Then for lunch, I know there are different campus plans, but what we did is we split each of our 2 lunch periods. We have a K-6 lunch period and a secondary lunch period. We split those into 2. And we use the cafeteria and we use the old gym. And what happens is we just have the hot boxes and they go to the old gym and serve, then they go back to the cafeteria, serve the students there. The students never leave their seats. Once they go there for lunch, that's where they stay. So they're social distance, they don't have to have their mask. The only time students get up during lunch is when they're excused to dump their tray. Okay? And so that was a bit of a change for our kitchen staff. But again, we've streamlined that. We've had some help with front office staff, and our counselor has taken advantage of that because Mrs. Burke says, I can informally check in with all of the students. And so she goes and helps serve lunch every day as well. So that's kitchen staff, custodial staff. And these guys have been absolutely hammered. And I want to put in the plug for that. I know Paul usually does that when he's here. Bus drivers and custodial staff, but I will say that my custodial staff has done excellent work in trying situations. Some of the things that they have to do that they have never had to do before. They disinfect lockers daily. Okay? Tables, desks, etc. Playground equipment. Outside playground equipment is now disinfected on a daily basis. Right? They set up the gym, tables in the gym every day, clean them before lunch, clean them after lunch, and take them down. Okay? And then they also, as often as they can, as their schedule, and they've changed their schedules, and we've actually had one of our substitute custodians, Tim Kilper, he comes in and helps us take care of tables before and after lunch. Otherwise, we wouldn't get it done. And then when you throw in snow shoveling, that like we've had some in the last few days, they have been stretched to the max and they have done excellent work. So I will put the plug in for them. Let's talk about teachers for a minute. Elementary teachers, they have fewer specials for planning now, because in the past we've been able to combine, say, a kindergarten and a first grade, send them to music, PE, Spanish, etc., and they get more time. We can't mix the cohorts now, and for us, cohorts are grade levels, so they have fewer time, fewer specials, fewer time to plan, all that kind of stuff. One other thing that's happening there, you know, they have to do recess for themselves every day because we can't put recess together anymore. Used to be we did a K6 recess a couple times a day, can't do that now. So they have to supervise their own recess. So their planning time has been impacted greatly. Secondary teachers, they have to come up with a plan for social distancing in every class. Okay, and that includes wearing masks, and they have to wipe down the desks in between every class. They have different students come in. So at the end of each class period, we're walking around, we're spraying a bottle, we have a soft cloth, wipe them off. We have to get the students ready to switch, all of that. I will say the breakfast in the classroom, teachers were initially a little bit reluctant with that, but we kind of made it work. The trash hasn't been an issue, the having food, we've done pretty well with that. I want to commend everybody on that one. And I saved students kind of for last, because I think they've had the biggest, it's been the biggest impact on students. And, you know, first of all, when they start the day, normally they can come into the building roughly whenever they got there, which was, you know, 7:25-ish to start the day at 7:55. So anywhere in that half hour. Now we keep the door locked and we don't let anyone in until 7:45. When they get there, they have to go to their locker. They have, you know, one stop, and then they go right to first hour class. They are with their cohort essentially, which is their grade level, through the day. Their social time has been interrupted by this. They don't get that. When it comes to lunch, you know, the way we did lunch, we set them at the table, and they're made, if they're in the cafeteria, there's 3 to a table. If they're in the gym, there's 2 to a table. So we changed the seating every quarter just to give them a little bit of a thing, but you don't want to do a lot of switching around. You still have to keep it within the cohort. You know, they don't get a lot of the trips out of school. Field trips have been impacted. We don't do nearly the trips we've had, and those things that they really like to, you know, supplement the learning. Virtual concerts for music are coming up. No school-wide assemblies. And part of the reason I have my flag face mask here is, you know, last week was Veterans Day. And typically we have an NHS project where we invite all the local veterans in. We do a program, and then every kid in the school goes by and shakes the hand of our local veterans. Couldn't do that this year. So what we did is we had Red, White, and Blue Day, a Patriotic Day. People wore masks like this. We took pictures, sent to veterans, etc. Trying to do things like that. We're trying to do some fun things with the students that they bring to us. And one of them was NHS also brought, they wanted No Shave November. And so they're doing all that. You notice that I look different than I have for the 16 years that I've been here. And I will tell you, my wife is not a big fan. We've been married 28 years. In 28 years, this is the first time I've been clean shaven. So I had to be clean shaven to start the No Shave November for NHS. So we're trying to do some things like that help them. And yet we still do our regular stuff. They're still taking Y-Talk. They're still doing ACT, all of the normal things that we try and do. And I think everybody's adjusted pretty well, students especially, because, you know, it's been rough on them. I do want to say that, you know, the new routines and precautions to keep us in school, that's what we're emphasizing this year. And, you know, we know it's going to be a strange year, but we keep emphasizing that with the students and the staff, that we want to keep the school open, keep the doors open. No one wants to go back to March and April of last year and how it was. So we're trying very hard to make sure we do that. And then I wanted to end on the high note. And so Dr. Copeland and I talked about it. I gave you a letter that came from a parent of a special needs kindergartner that was reluctant at the beginning of the year about how things were going to go. And I can tell you, in 16 years, I think maybe this is the second time we've ever got it like this. So I'm just sharing that with you guys on the board and not putting that in public. So anything that you guys want to ask me about the Smart Start plan, I'm open to questions.
So you mentioned a couple times the breakfast, Mike. I'm curious if you feel like that's helping the kids pay attention a little more. Or they all have like
you know,
elementary kids.
I don't know.
It's something.
I don't know because I know that there's a lot of paying attention to when the kitchen staff's gonna drop the breakfast off outside the door. And when can we get to that during first hour? But there's a lot more kids eating too. You know, our numbers went from somewhere around 30-ish a day to now about 70 a day, give or take.
I just know my second grader, or whatever he's in, third grader, he's pretty grumpy in the morning and he's happy about the school breakfast. He gets his school breakfast and then he feels like, I'm sure he pays better than him. That's just my.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm sure it helps, but I do know there's a lot of watching through the doorway. Did they drop it off yet? Did they drop it off yet?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I appreciate the way you did that update, because that, you know, sometimes.
Well, I hope it was
we-
helpful for you.
We don't see all the extra work that goes in and
Right.
wiping the desks down, you know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of extra work and extra accommodations on everybody's part. Students, staff, bus drivers, everyone, to make it happen. And I think everybody really appreciates just having some semblance of normalcy. So,
We pass along our things.
I will.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
Great update. Steven?
Thank you, guys. I'm not gonna read this report word for word. I'm just gonna kind of go over the highlights. We started with 25 students in our classroom-based virtual education program. We had 3 that chose to leave the program relatively early in the year to pursue other options. And they didn't say what they were doing, whether they were doing homeschooling or another virtual school. They didn't say exactly what they were doing. We've had to drop 5 students. As you know, we have a 10-day attendance, statewide 10-day attendance policy. So we've had to drop 5 of those due to lack of participation. So 2 of those have decided to come back to face-to-face instruction. Then we've had, since I sent this in, 2 other students that have come back to face-to-face instruction. And that leaves 15 students that are currently enrolled in our CBVE program. And that's as of this moment in time. We have some that have inquired about it, especially as cases rise around the state. They've inquired about it, just getting some information, and also have some others that are on the bubble as a for dropping just due to lack of participation. We have a variety of participation, and it depends on the student. Some students are just doing great, do their work all the time, don't even have to remind them. Other students, we're reminding them all the time, and then they do it right at the last minute. And it just really depends on the student, really depends on the amount of support that they get at home. It's really not any different than kids that are face-to-face. The amount of support that they get at home, that's kind of how much participation you get from the kid. So it just varies. I know it can be frustrating for the instructors, especially at the secondary level, because they might do a lot of work in one class and nothing in another. So it can be very frustrating. But overall, the program is going fairly well. A lot of work going in from the instructors, as well as on my end, as far as contacting parents, phone calls, emails, etc., and trying to get that participation. If you guys have questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
So when these kids are quarantined, Stephen, does that fall under yours, or are you just handling the kids that are out all the time?
I'm just handling the kids that are out all the time, the ones
Okay.
that have chose not to come back at all. When
Okay.
they're quarantined, they do the work with their home instructor and do that. They still do that through Schoology, but they do that with their home instructor and their home principal.
So I'm curious, so we've had 4 students come back to classroom. Did you or any other principals or teachers have feedback on whether they've kind of caught up or whether that's been seamless or how that's?
Most of them have been fairly on track. Most of them are right there, kind of where they need to be within a week or so. Some of them are just most recent one. They are behind a little bit. And that's just due to lack of doing some things. So we're gonna have to work with that one to get them where they need to be. So that one won't be as seamless as some of the other ones. And we'll just work with them like we have anybody else that's transferred in, that's come in and been not where we wanted them to be.
Stephen, before we drop these kids, you contacted them, they do have the option to come back to in
Yeah,
person every time,
We
right?
have a letter that we send out. When we drop a kid, normally when we drop a kid, it's right at 10 days. These ones are actually a little over 10 days. And the reason that is because we do the attendance a week behind. So like if we're doing attendance today, it would be for last week. So we're a week behind doing our attendance. We look at the participation for last week and do that last week's attendance. So we're looking at that last week attendance, and then we send a letter and say, you haven't done anything for a couple weeks, which is it's not quite 10 days. Then we're like at usually between 6 and 8, depending on how long it's been that they've done something. When they get close to that 10 days, we send that letter and we say, you haven't done anything. You're at risk of being dropped, just like we do with we do a phone call and an email with that as well, just like we do with kids that are face to face. And we give them 3 things that options that they can do. Get your work done with the CBVE program, turn things in, come back face to face, or look at another virtual education program, which is really those options that are out there for anybody. And hopefully they get their stuff done, or they decide to come back face to face. And usually, when we call them and talk to them, and we try to call or contact them or email well before this, it works, and they get their stuff turned in. It doesn't always.
Do you feel like it's more successful at an elementary level than a high school level, vice versa? What are you seeing?
I don't know if it's more successful in either one. It's just more successful wherever the parents are involved. So I don't know if it's more successful at one level or the other. I just think wherever the parents are involved, that's where it's most successful. I don't know that there's an age difference. It's just wherever the parents are involved.
And I didn't know, but just having one teacher elementary based, like I know my kids at home, that I had an easier time with one teacher.
And they don't, the elementary doesn't necessarily just have one teacher, because they have the one teacher for most of their subjects, but then they have another teacher for PE. They still have the PE stuff that they have to do. Then they still have their music stuff that they have to do. And then they still have their art stuff. So they don't necessarily just have one teacher. It is a lot different than when we were shut down in the spring. And I think those that have not done a whole lot or not been successful, I think that was the biggest thing that they expected. They thought it was going to be like it was in the spring. Oh, well, I just don't have to do a whole lot. I'm going to, I'll squeak by with a passing grade. And when they found out that there are expectations, you're doing basically the same thing that you're doing in the classroom, that's where the big surprise for them was. That there are expectations and they have to do, it's just like being in the classroom, you're just on the computer and doing it.
Do you feel that doing it homeschool a lot of times on different online platforms handle putting information out and having the information come back in a lot differently than I think we do? Do you think that's a struggle for kids that have done homeschool before that do the virtual option?
I'm not necessarily familiar with how homeschool does it, so I don't know that I could answer that.
A lot of times they're given like all the information and they just have, like this has to be done by the end of the quarter, that type of stuff, where you probably have weekly checks.
We do it weekly. with the teachers put everything out weekly, and here are your assignments for the week. And they have to get it done within the week. And I think some kids do very well with that. They just have to be disciplined in getting it done. And some kids don't. So, I mean, that's probably the biggest difference, is they might put it all out at once for the quarter. We just put it out weekly.
Thank you.
Do you have any feedback or any other principles from the staff regarding this? How it's working, not working, frustrations, success?
Yeah. I think the biggest frustration is just the kids that don't do the work, and that's, if we could get the kids to turn stuff in on time, that would be, but I don't have a magic bullet for that. If I had the magic bullet for that, I'd write a book and travel the country and tell people how to do it, but I don't.
The other principals, you guys.
I think the amount of time that it takes the teachers to do both their in-class work and the work for the CDD, I think that's been a little bit overwhelming for some of our staff.
The lack of work and coming back at them, that's what I've heard most of my teachers are involved.
Same with just amount of time. I think when it was first presented to them and stuff, and then be part of their class, there's been a lot more things by the state level put in on our teachers that they have to now do, some things like that frustrated some of our staff that are doing.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, item C, Robin, if you want to give us, we haven't heard a special ed update in a while, so.
Actually have, I just want to take one and I don't know if this is not on there. So just kind of an update of where we're sitting with enrollment. Right now, we have 101 active special ed kids, and that's all disability categories. We are in the process of currently evaluating several kids. I think we have 6 that were out of state transfers that we have to evaluate, and then we have 9 that have gone through the bid process throughout the district. So we're determining if they're going to qualify. What I just gave you is a couple of reports. Every year they, the DM group is what it's called, they go through and they look at all the special ed data, and there's 14 different indicators that they look at. And then they give us report after report after report. Every October we get together and go through them and kind of look at our strengths and weaknesses. So the 2 that I gave you are just kind of an update of where we're at. The very first one is just kind of 2 of the indicators that they look at. The first couple are YTOP. So you can see there we're well above the state average for proficiency with our special ed kids. And then also with growth. We are, the one area that I'm a little bit concerned at is that there is more of a gap between our regular ed kids and our special ed kids than what there is across the state. So we have more that are proficient, but the actual scores, our regular ed kids are scoring really high, and our special ed kids are high compared to the state, but compared to their peers, they're lower. So that's something we want to look at to see why that gap is there, and then to try to bring our kids up a little bit higher so there's not that gap. The other area that we were a little bit lower is the growth in math, and we were just slightly below the state average. So again, our kids are proficient, or more of them are than across the state, but there's just that growth is not quite there in math like we would want.
What's the percentage across the state of kids that are special ed?
We're across the state, it's about 15%.
So we're pretty close.
Yeah, I think we're slightly higher than, I think we were about 0.5% higher than the state.
So there's, I just wondered if that had anything.
Yeah. No, we were pretty similar. Yeah. So last year in math, that was a concern. The special ed teachers have been working, we did some CPM work last year to help the kids in the regular classroom. And I think that helped a little bit, but we still have a ways to go with that. So we're gonna keep working on our math with our special ed kids. The other couple pages that I gave you, it kind of shows where we're at compared to the state, but this is all the indicators that they look at. And then within this, we go through in detail what all of these mean in different categories, and they split it up between ages and genders and disability categories and all of that. But just kind of where we're at. We were above the state in everything except for the percent of youth enrolled in higher education once they leave high school. And that is, so our kids that are going on to a post-secondary school, we had less this last year. But then overall, when we look at kids, if they went on to do something after high school, whether it's a job or school, we were above the state average if they were doing something. So our kids aren't just going and sitting at home. Most of them are getting jobs. So I think it kind of equals out in my mind that we need people in the workforce too. That's the only area that we were below the state average. So the report card, if you go through this and there's any area that you're more interested in, like I said, it's hundreds of pages of information that they gave us. So I can always pull more information if you're interested. So just let me know about that. Other stuff in special ed, just kind of a COVID update. When we shut schools last year, we were in the process of evaluating a lot of kids. We usually do all of our spring evaluations and the first of the fall evaluations in the spring. We obviously couldn't do that because we didn't have the kids in school. So we've been working kind of double time this fall to make up for everything last spring and this fall. Drew's done many tests to try to get caught up. I think we finally are caught up from that, and so now we're just kind of back to our normal timing of things. So things hopefully will calm down for us a little bit. We met as in our PLC, and everybody's kind of on board. We're ready to go to virtual type of services if we have to. They're starting to go through, and in the IEPs, they're writing in a plan B. For the kids, so that if we are to go virtual or if the kid is quarantined for an extended period of time, we already have that plan ready. So then we can just move right into it the next day and we don't have any lag time, so the kids aren't missing any of their education. So most of those kids, as we're having meetings, we're putting that plan in place. And just a couple other updates. We have our crisis prevention intervention trainings. We have 2 trainers in our district right now, but they're both classroom teachers. And so if we need to train somebody on a school day, we're having to take them out, and we wanted to make it so it was not quite such a hassle for everybody. So we have a few more people getting trained to teach that. Drew just went through last week and got that training, so he's now certified. And then Stephen Priest and Laura Nislinder are also going to go through and do that training next month. So we'll have people trained to do that whenever we need to. And then I think the very last thing, just if you start seeing some postings, we've had 4 students start school this year or recently that have kind of more high needs type of disabilities, some things that we don't see very often. So we're having to learn new things and get some new staff and do some different types of evaluations that we're not used to. So we're having quite a few changes. People have been on board and really willing to learn new things and move around and do what they need to do. So I really appreciate that from our staff, but we've had kind of an interesting year when it comes to that. So any questions about special ed, where we're at?
They give you kind of like we got with testing of variants, because you have to have those IEP reviews done or whatever.
They did last spring, where we could meet with the parents and determine a timeline. And luckily, all of our parents were really good about it. We were able to set a new timeline, but now going forward, there's not any variances from this point on. So we kind of have to be pretty aware of the timeline. There was with that, I don't know if you guys had heard about it, there was a group in New York that was suing all the school districts in America for the shutdown last year that the kids weren't getting their services. And we just got word yesterday that that has been dismissed and we can't do that. So that was good news.
Yeah.
With the special ed report, would you guys want me to give just a little bit of where we're at each month?
I think so. Like anything that's, brief report, anything that's new or different, or,
Okay.
yeah, and challenges, successes.
Sure.
And positions,
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So,
I can do that.
thanks, Robin.
All right, thank you.
Noel, but you've got a few things there.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll try to be as brief as possible considering the people that are out there waiting to hear some information and such. For a curriculum update, I just wanted to let you know that last month after our last October in-service, we did some training with our staff members on some Schoology usage, increased Schoology usage. We had some communication issues between Schoology and Power School. So we held off with this last in-service. We were going to do some elementary teacher training until we had a little bit better understanding of that. So hopefully that's coming. We're going to be discussing it later this week at our next AT meeting, actually, to see how we can go forward with that, to make sure that we're not causing more problems for staff members, if anything. District assessment system update, just a brief little update here about, I've got a couple of different PLC groups now that want to meet with me and do some additional work with proficiency scales. We're holding off on those sessions. We usually hold them in the district office here until maybe early spring and see how cases are going across the district, considering the fact that we've had increases with staff members. Just trying to keep everyone as safe as possible. And people are fine with that. I'm happy to hear that people want to get together and try to do some work again, just because this has been a very trying year, I think, so far already. But there's individuals that want to take on those extra responsibilities. It's fantastic to see. Assessment. So I've attached a report you should all have access to for some YTOP interim results for our interim window that just closed at the end of October. There's actually a lot more than just this particular report. I tried to make it as simple as possible for you all. If you take a look at that report, try to color code different things to align with the way that the state actually shows us the information. So we have our below basic, our proficient, and advanced, and all those different colors. I actually recommend when you take a look at this report that you look at the white columns, because I feel like the white columns are a nice summary of the information of what we really want to look at. So there's the total percent BB and B, which is below basic and basic combined, and then the total P and A, so the total proficient and advanced combined. I feel like that gives you a little bit more concise of a view of how our students are performing. Overall, page 1, if you're looking along with me, is the district ELA, and I've got the state scores on the left-hand side, our district scores on the right-hand side. Overall, our district is scoring above state averages for ELA 3rd grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. We're averaging about the same for ELA 4th grade, 7th grade, and 9th grade. We are a little bit below the state average for 5th grade. And please keep in mind, these are percentages because we have lower populations. We're talking maybe sometimes 1 or 2 kids that could skew the data, unfortunately. So just because we're even behind or above, let's be honest, that could just be a number of kids that are actually causing that. If you skip to page 6, that is our district math scores. And again, the state levels are on the left-hand side. Our levels are on the right-hand side. We are a little bit, I don't want to say worse, but our scores aren't as strong with math. We're at the same, right? I'll start with the above. We're above state averages for math 8th grade and 10th grade. We're at the same for 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th, and we're a little bit below for grades 5 and grade 9. Okay. Again, though, that could just be a few kids that are skewing that information. I also included in this the individual school reports. And this is, like I said, just one particular lens to look at this data. This is just the fall and term data, not only for this year, but the last 3 years, to try to see if we can notice any trends. It does look like some of our grades might have dropped a little bit, and it varies from school to school. Rather than to get into that, I would say, please feel free to look that over. And if you have any questions about the report, let me know. I can also show you additional reports. I have interim scores for fall and winter ever since 2017 when we started the YTOP, if you'd like to see that information. And I also tried to put it together to track students as they go up in grades. So what was the third grade score for the YTOP interim in 2017? Then what was that same group of kids scores when they were in fourth grade the following year, and so on. So maybe you can see a trend. I don't put a lot of stock into YTOP testing just because I know that we've seen now over time that the interim tests are a little bit easier than the summative test. And beyond that even, this is just very brief moments of time in these students' educational experiences. But it is some data out there. Again, feel free to look that over if you have a question or if you'd like to see more of that information. I'm happy to pass that on to you. But I wanted to try to make it as simple as possible for now. Beyond that, our last in-service we had on November 6th, I think it went a lot more, or it went much better than our in-service on October 5th. We tried to split up the time equally 3 ways to give people PLC time, to give principals honoring their requests. They wanted more time with their teachers to talk about building specific things, and then to give teachers some time to themselves as well, where they could pursue working with their PLC groups a little bit more, time in their classrooms, trying to work on some of the PD for the classroom-based virtual education that Mr. Priest was talking about before. Teachers responded well to that. I mentioned in my last month's report, as part of our accreditation process, so we're asked to collect information for our collective efficacy, and that's just our group feeling about how we're doing in terms of influencing students' lives, making a difference in their education. The good news is for all 7 of our schools, we scored at least at average, which is a good thing in this particular case. It means that we are positive, we have the mindset that we can positively affect our students' lives, but also kind of cool information, especially compared to last year's numbers, is that 2 of our schools actually increased their scores, and they're above average. They're above 84% of the schools that were used to help develop this particular survey, and that's for the Gamet School and for Saratoga Elementary School. So not to put any of our other schools down, but the Gamet teachers and the Saratoga Elementary teachers especially, they feel that they're being very impactful on their students' lives. So that's great, and hopefully when we take this survey in the future, we'll see even higher scores as teachers maybe feel a little more confident for various reasons about what they're doing for their students' lives. And then beyond that, we haven't yet heard, to my knowledge, anything about our accreditation process, but we did submit that on November 1st. I'm fairly confident we're not going to get anything back, especially after our visit last year. The only other part I mentioned in here really is just about that SCED coding review. I've mentioned before about all the SCED codes that we assign within our district to communicate across the state. I'm taking a new direction on that because of the complexity of that. Hopefully I'll be able to get some results for that in January.
Thank you. Any questions for Noel? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, if we have detailed questions about the YTOP, we can. Is there, all right, 7, is there any public comment regarding anything besides item 9B on the COVID situation?
I don't think you're allowed enough.
Okay.
Try it again.
Can you repeat that out there for them, please, Noel?
They want to know.
Thank you. All right. There is no unfinished business. Item 9A is consider approval of notice to call a bids for sale of Medbo property, and request the same be published.
Bill has worked on a bid for notice based on last month's board meeting, and this is for your approval to publish in the next 3 weeks, I think. And open the bids at the December meeting. And so we have had it surveyed. I just got him the map and the legal description from the survey this afternoon, so he can add that to the notice. And my recommendation is to approve the bid, call for bids, and Bill's here to answer any questions about that. But I think this is just to approve, you put that in paper and go forward.
And I tried in the call for bids to leave it as wide open as possible, so you guys aren't really locked in, and we'll soon kind of go fishing and see what you guys.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the notice the notice of call for bids for the sale of the Medicine Bow property and request that it be published.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the notice of call for bids for the sale of the municipal property and request the same be published. Is there any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so just for room and to allow people to kind of participate in this, those of you that maybe don't feel you're essential, if you get to the COVID and the quarantine situation, maybe kind of clear the room. You know, the principals that their teams are involved or your students are involved, I'd sure like you to stay, JD and Darren, if you can. Obviously, news people you can stay. But just to kind of make some spatial guidelines, somebody can come back here. What's that? Nick, yeah, you can sit back here if you want, kind of get an idea. And even if, yeah, Mike's getting cleared out. I'll go talk to them a little bit. So I think they'll get a better perspective if they can hear the more of the conversation. So we might even have Big Karen come down.
Crazy slow in that. It's gonna be a while to figure that one out. It's kind of blended.
We'll try to get, yeah. Okay. And we're gonna try to.
Not yet, it's not, items for the board. Items for the board, items from the board, yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Me and you were going in the back.
Yeah, I think you could be,
Where,
if you wear a mask.
yeah, off of the, yeah.
I won't breathe on anybody. I will mask you with the flag.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna talk, you need to, I think we can kind of line the wall, you're wearing a mask, you can come in, we can find the chairs. If you're gonna talk, you can maybe come up to the middle, take your mask off and have a space. So that way we can accommodate people that want to be in here. Thank you guys for doing that. I won't let them sit in their chair.
They can sit in my chair. I don't care.
And we can be in here against this wall too, kind of. So.
I sit in.
Yeah.
Close your eyes.
But there's extra orange chairs back there, you guys are welcome to grab those.
I can
If you'd like
sit like-
to.
I'm trying to have break the number.
Yeah.
And there's some of you can stand against this wall here where the black chairs are. There's nobody gonna be there. So,
Mandy, you can sit in my chair too.
I'm already on the floor.
okay.
Those two chairs are open, you're welcome to sit there anyway.
I sat in one though. Just be one.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, first of all, we sure appreciate you guys coming. Obviously, if we'd have known this many people were here, we'd have tried to find a bigger space, but this kind of happened over the weekend, so, or this many people decided to come. Dr. Copeland, I'll turn it over to you for a minute and kind of give a background of where we're at. And then we'll open it up to public comment.
Okay. Well, I'll just kind of give a background of what we've been told. Basically, we're somewhat at the mercy of the Carbon County Public Health Department. They either call us when they have a positive that affects the school in any way, or in some cases, a parent calls us and says, you know, our son has tested positive, or a parent's tested positive, and then that creates us to call the Carbon County Public Health. They have made a few changes in the last couple of weeks, partly because they've been completely overwhelmed. So they have told us that they are only going to do certain contact tracing. They've basically reduced what they're going to do is based on they don't have the capacity with the number of cases. So they are calling positive cases, and they're talking to those folks. And what we've been told at least about a week ago is that they're going to then let those people contact the people that they have been in direct contact with. So I don't know how that's going to work. That's on them, you know, not us. We do, our nurses, I will give it to them. They do a lot of background work on this and spend some time. So that's about all they do in a particular day if there's a situation that comes up. Carbon County Public Health has also told us that they will continue to be involved when there are group decisions. In other words, it's a whole classroom that's in question, or it's a team, as what has happened this past week, basically. They have quarantined, the Carbon County Public Health guidelines have quarantined 4 Carbon 1 teams and 3 Carbon 2 teams. You know, how this works, it puts everybody a little bit in a bind, I'll be honest. And there is frustration over consistency, and we want to address that to them. What they've told us on the consistency is they do look at data and change their guidelines depending on what they're seeing. So what they might recommend, and then she said this tonight at the work session, what they might recommend 2 weeks ago might change next week because of what they've seen since then, the data they're seeing across the state. They did tell us, we quizzed them, they did tell us that they consider basketball games a heightened, what was the term? Heightened danger or heightened exposure, maybe is the right term, for students. And so they take more cautious actions when there's a team. The way they explain that to us is in our classrooms, we basically, according to our plan, try to distance as best we can. And if students are going to be closer together for more than 15 minutes, they're supposed to wear a mask. And they ask teachers that in some of the situations we've dealt with in the past. If we're following those, then they don't deem that as high of a risk as playing in a basketball game with no mask and people breathing more heavy and exerting activity. I'm just quoting kind of what she's told us. She did go and showed us some data this morning about how much worse the situation is across the state and in Carbon County. Just FYI, that's kind of an aside from this, they have petitioned the governor and the state health department to issue a mask mandate for all adults in public places in Carbon County. They also said that that may be preempted because of the governor taking that action statewide. There's talk that he's going to announce that this week. We don't know that. Some of the information we've gotten as superintendents indicate that he is moving toward that, and I think his press conference last week kind of indicated that. But anyway, back to the teams. So today, as we talked a little more with them, and tonight, as a matter of fact, she actually, I feel like gave us a little more flexibility than we've had in the past about these team things, because she said that they have no capacity to do detailed contact tracing by looking at the book and trying to figure out who has been in the game. She said that we were welcome to do that, which is kind of a newer flexibility than we knew, to be honest. And I will talk to Nikki tomorrow and JD and coaches and some of the others. It might even determine how we keep the book moving forward in high school, as opposed to, are they in the quarter or not, or maybe the times now, I don't know. The caveat to that is that the parent of the positive case on the opposing team would have to allow the confidential information to be given to us as far as who it is. We don't yet know who these particular individuals were for HEM or for Saratoga. All we know is that HEM's was based on their game of bags, or Little Snake River Valley, and Saratoga's was based on the game with the Rollins, I think it was 7th grade, or anyway, one of the Rollins teams. So that's just kind of where we are. In light of this, I also did some more digging. So I talked to WDE because I wanted to be sure, you know, I didn't know what leeway we had, to be honest, because we haven't really been given a lot of leeway to not go by the county health guidelines. So I called an attorney, and in fact, I talked to Bill, but then I talked to the one that's helping us in our COVID situations, which is Kelly Pearson out of Cheyenne. She did say that it would be she didn't think it would be wise to go against county health due to liability issues that could arise then if there was a breakout or there was some lawsuits or whatever. If we didn't follow Carbon County Public Health, which it would show some negligence or could possibly show some negligence. That's from a legal thing. So when talking to WDE, I said, you've seen and approved our Smart Start plan. Is there flexibility in that? If we do not go by the guidance of the Carbon County Public Health, you know, what are the repercussions? I was told today that they would consider we are not adhering to our state approved plan, so it would be at risk for any funding and so on from the WDE standpoint. So we're kind of in a box, to be honest. The only good thing that we kind of found out today is this tonight when she told us that we could look at the book and do some extra contact tracing, and which we're willing to do. Our nurses are a little overworked some days, I'll be honest, so we may have to call in some coaches and some other people to kind of sit down and do some kind of spreadsheet or figure out what we're going on if and once we get the name of the opposing player. So that's just where we are, where we've been. The health department today, I quizzed them. I said, okay, you know, recommendations, guidance, you know, you're telling us this. So what is our, from the health department standpoint, what is your perspective on schools? You know, what kind of flexibility? Basically, she told us that if we did not follow the recommendations or guidance, they would issue an order and then it would become a legal matter that could be prosecuted. So, I mean, I'm the messenger. I'm not the one that's, you know, deciding on this. So it's just a pretty big, broad situation. I'm just trying to summarize. That's where we are right now. Again, I'll talk to Nikki in the morning. We may pull in some books and some coaches and figure this out and see if there's some kids that we can bring back to school and it not be a completely group quarantine. They did tell Nikki already that if the students did not play at all in the game or they did not travel or wasn't part of it, and so I think she's already excused 3 or 4 based on that. So now with this extra flexibility, we will look at others to see, you know, if somebody was in the game 2 minutes and that's all they played, or if they were in a quarter that the other particular student was not in, then we have that flexibility to back off some. So that's where we are, again, the latest as of tonight. And so that's kind of my update.
I might share something with those of you that are on the board. Obviously, the parents, they know the situation. But so my daughter's on the team. She got quarantined. She is quarantined by the Wyoming Department of Health, not Carbon County School District 2, not Carbon County Public Health.
Well, in Carbon
So
County
just
Public Health,
don't, I guess when we have comments, you're welcome to express your opinions. Don't rail on the school district as we quarantined your kids. That is not how it works. And so for other board members as well, it's not something that came from the district. It's not something that came from the administration. We can choose how to respond to it, but it's not our quarantine, right? This came from Wyoming Department of Health, not Carbon County School District 2. So just keep that in mind.
and she did say, that brought back the memory of what she said, that they, in group quarantines, it is after consultation with the state health department.
Yeah, I just opened my letter to be sure. Because first when I heard my kids quarantine, I'm like, oh, she can't go play for a couple of weeks. Well, because I didn't understand school. And as we do this, you know, try to keep repetition to a minimum. You know, don't say the same thing exactly that somebody else just said 6 times in a row. A couple times we'll get the point, I think. So, you know, we really do want to have an open meeting and hear concerns and So there's no particular way other than, try to keep it to a couple minutes. Raise your hand and I'll recognize you and, we'll go. Anybody else from the board or administration want to say anything before we start? I mean, so the point of having this is, yes, it's happened. It came from the state of Wyoming. I mean, there's a lot of people here concerned and we're frustrated. I'm frustrated as a parent, but we're willing to listen to what you have. And if you have suggestions on what we might do, just to say you're frustrated won't get us real far. I don't think so. Right? Go ahead.
As a parent too of the kids and everything that happened, I think after talking to the health officials today, she did at least give us a little leeway that we can question these orders and maybe do different things about them. So I think if we're, as a group, proactive and work together, we can figure out ways to not quarantine whole teams, which was very important to me that we got out of that. Because some kids didn't play, some kids played a minute. And if we have this capability moving forward and knowing this, we can track times that the kids are in there and that type of stuff. So when it comes down to it, you can say, my daughter only played a minute and a half, not even that quarter. They're not quarantined, we can help our nurses and stuff. We all can work together to come up with the best solution that's best for the kids so they can play.
She told us that when she actually did this, we called it the blanket quarantine. It's because they don't have enough people to actually drill down into it and say, well, your kid played this long and your kid, and Jared, I'm looking at you and I don't know how this is gonna work with wrestling, we'll just see. But I felt better after I listened to her and she talked to the board because I think she's a little more flexible. In all honesty, I felt like it was just a move that matched Rollins, and that's what really irritated me as a parent. And so, when I talked to her about why aren't the families quarantined, she said they go one level up from the positive, so the families and the parents and the siblings really aren't at risk, of the exposure of our daughters. So that made some sense to me, but anyway, at least there's some flexibility that gave me some hope.
And the other question, one of the questions I asked was about the COVID testing. That if you test negative, you can't test your way out of it because they're in that 14 days, it's in the exposure. The virus could be replicating and it could still pop up. Incubation period. So that's why that's why we can't.
She did also say that it is different if a student on your team tests positive as opposed to a student on the opposing team. Because then if it's on your team, they may be on the bus together, they're in the dressing rooms together, it's going to be a little more stringent. We did, just as an aside, get some new guidelines from WASA that they just sent out today for basketball and wrestling in general. And they're, again, stricter than they have been in space coverage for anybody in the building unless you're on the court playing for basketball.
But
So,
on the bench and everything.
On the bench, coaches, everybody wears a mask the whole time. So things are getting tighter. I also say no team dinners, by the way, moving forward in basketball and wrestling. I just happen to notice that. So.
Okay, anybody like to share a comment? Greg, I know you're ready. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
You guys care if I take this off?
No, that's fine. That's why we kept the center open, so you're welcome to do that.
Maybe I'll stand here so the back can hear my left point.
Yeah.
Thank you for at least giving all of us an opportunity to hear, somewhat what the perspective is. I was able to be on the Zoom this afternoon with her as well. But from a standpoint of the investigations that I have done, which I have documentation from other schools, partly what she's saying is not true. I want to bring those things out. So I think that's the important part of this. She said something of this nature, decisions are based at a state level and they're being followed at the state level. So I have multiple school districts that I have contacted from Saturday through today that have told me, no, we don't have anything like that taking place. So her facts is coming from the state if it's coming from the state, it's coming directly at Carbon County and not at other teams. One of the schools that I know that had possibly I don't know about saying the most, but a higher amount of positive COVID tests throughout fall and even into now. I have documentation, and I'm happy to share that with you, that they aren't even quarantining teams when they have positive cases. Okay, if you go into WASA's SMART guidelines, in which we as Carbon 2 put together and sent to the County Public Health for their approval, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 2, the very first bullet point says positive test. Okay, to my knowledge, and this could be wrong because I know we're testing, kids are being tested all the time. We don't have a positive. So we allowed her, and when I say her, she might say it's coming, I know this Wyoming State, you think Wyoming did something without Carbon County telling them? So we need to be a little bit accurate of where that came from. Carbon County sent that to the state of Wyoming. But
Well,
Carbon
my point
County,
is it's not from Carbon County School District.
right, it's not the school district, and I have defended that.
That's the point I wanted.
Yeah, I have defended that. I know that this had nothing to do with, and I've said that to parents that have been contacting me all weekend. So we allowed that type of authority to overrun what WASA put together that they approved. I understand things change, okay? Everything is so new, but these other schools are not quarantining teams. They are quarantining individuals. They're pulling, some of them aren't even quarantining, they're pulling them from practice, pulling them from school, doing a test, testing others. If everything's fine, there is no blanket mask. I couldn't find a county one that had more than two teams that are having even any issues, let alone 7 in Carbon County. So her statement that it's being said from the state level, it does not reflect what other school districts have informed me with today. And I'm happy to share that information from you. I was in Shoshone on Saturday. So we all know Fremont County has 28 school districts. So it's a lot of differences. Each one of those schools that I talked to, which is Shoshone and Wind River and Riverton, they all have students that are being quarantined. There isn't a team one under quarantine. And this is Fremont County where the worst of it obviously started. Maybe the worst of it isn't there right now. So I come to you as an advocate for kids. The main reason I'm here is school, okay? I mean, I'm a sports guy, but we can't have sports without school. So let's start at the basic. If we're going to start seeing these blanket, type quarantines over mass groups of kids, it will take no time at all until we have to stop school due to there's no kids, there's no staff, there's no kids, there's no staff, there's no athletics, there's no activities. And I do believe her when she said this, the ultimate goal is to keep schools open. I have full regard that that's her job. This is what really got to me over the weekend was on Thursday evening, just as a reflection on events that took place Thursday evening, I got a call from the Rollins school and they said, we want to let you know that we had a girl that tested positive today. So this was Thursday and she was in your school Tuesday. She played in the both A and the B game. And they said, and I don't understand the logistics of this in terms of the days, but they said because of how her test was, they believe that she had been exposed or infected at least 5 days prior, which puts her in our school gym. So I called Principal Johnson, we're going off of Tier 1, Tier 2, which is what our school we think we're going by, right? Positive test, not on our team. So we're sending the girls. On Friday morning, we get the call from Carbon County Public Health, and the call came from Carbon County Public Health, not the State Health Department, saying, whoa, your whole team's in quarantine. Now, forgive my length, I don't mean to take everybody's time, but I think this is important. That all took place in a matter of about 10 hours, and there was no time or no reflection from our school or from them to stop and say, whoa, okay, so this girl is here. What are the CDC guidelines? What can we do to not do such a drastic measure? It was just boom, boom. So I'm actually driving from Shoshone Saturday, and it just dawns on me, crap, we had a couple of girls that weren't even part of the game. So I call Nikki and I say, Nikki, by the way, and she worked all day Saturday. When Dr. Copeland said the nurses are overworked, Dr. Copeland, everybody's overworked. So we can't make excuses of overwork. We all have to just put in work Saturday, Sunday. But she was working and she said, oh, I didn't realize that. She instantly got a hold and was able to take 2 girls off of the quarantine that day. If we're gonna continue to let this type of overrun, I call it, of the public health, I think as elected officials, as advocates for our children and in the education system, we at least need to be more vocal and say, hang on, I see where you're going with this. Can we take some time? Can we know you're overworked, public health. I think everybody understands it. What an awful position to be in right now. But can we say, can we stop and maybe just take a day or two? Let us go through some game film. I can't guarantee this, but I would bet you very strongly that when we sit down and if we are provided the name or number of this girl that from Rollins that was played, at least half of these girls that are missing school can be removed from that. So we're missing these highly important education days with no, thought to, whoa, just slow down and let's work through this. I get it. They've got all this stuff happening. If they didn't think it was coming, then they're pretty neglectful in their work. There should be some foresight in terms of, and as a school, I think that, we need to be able to come out earlier on and say, hey, this has taken place. And we still had a few parents this morning that still weren't notified of what was happening. They heard about it in the grapevine, but in a one-on-one basis, it was not notified. So I'm here just asking if you can help in terms of, we got to adhere to what they're saying. I don't think anybody here is going to come out and say, we're not going to follow Carbon County or state Wyoming Department of Health guidelines. But can we slow this down a little bit and say, can we look at the situation? And I believe Dr. Colton, forgive me if I'm not right, but last week, did not she say they were going to do more contact tracing at the school level, allowed the schools, okay? So could we not say, okay, you told us we can, let us look at the books, let us look at this film, and let's see how many of these kids did fall under the CDC guideline. If it took today to do it, so we miss a kid for, a day, that's lots better than 16 girls they're only gonna miss 9 days of school, but just because of Thanksgiving. But it's a 5-day week, so unfortunately that was another day education out for Friday.
I think she seemed open to that, to be honest, if we would do some work on our part to prove that, the game film is something that hadn't brought up before, that you can watch that and time things.
Yeah.
I mean,
One of the book would help a lot. In fact, like I say, we might even, looking at high school, maybe if we had somebody that would put time in and time out of it. I mean, I know that's a lot of work, but I mean, it might be worth it.
Everybody here, I believe, coaches, tell me if I'm wrong, but we're all willing to put in every second to allow kids to participate.
And I didn't mean we wouldn't work weekends. I just meant they're overworked. I was just trying to appreciate the nurses.
They do work hard, but we're all working hard. So
I will say a couple of things. One of the things that I went back and looked in detail again in our Smart Start plan that was approved by WE under athletics and activities, it does have the statement, and I pointed this out today when I talked to them. Carbon County 2 will follow guidance from WASA provided it is not in conflict with guidance from Carbon County Public Health. So we are still caught in a little bit of a deal here, and I don't mind trying to think of ways to push back with Carbon Health, and we have pushed back, but it's just, it caught everybody by surprise with them calling up and saying, hey, you got quarantine these 3 teams. We did have one, just for the record, we did have one student member of one of those teams that was a positive. That's a different situation than the other 2. So you said
of our team,
yeah.
that just took place today. Then
our county team.
Our county.
Oh, I thought you meant our team. I'm talking about
No,
our
and
team.
I do think there are some testing going on, and we have not heard back. I haven't been made aware of any tests from Saratoga's team or HEMU.
And a follow-up question, when were the 2 Hannah teams quarantined? You remember, anybody know?
I think that might have been
This was
Thursday.
before.
Before.
Thursday, I think.
Yeah,
Was it just
Thursday.
Thursday?
Wednesday or
The
Thursday.
basketball team was Thursday because that's when we found out about it, wasn't it?
I had an email from Russ Mahan on Wednesday stating that that's.
It could have been later Wednesday. And then the high school volleyball team is the other of our 3 teams of HEM.
So, Dr. Copeland, who is on the calls with Amanda? As far as, when she makes these calls, or do you have like a weekly call or whatever?
No, I will be honest. Part of our frustration is access to Carbon County Public Health and Amanda in specific. When we call, the best way that Nikki has found to get in touch with her is to text a cell number. I don't know if it's public, job or personal or whatever. If you just call over there, you're going to get leave a message, the contact is not there. And unfortunately, on this particular case, there was a game that day, so something had to be decided, at least as far as that game. The access has been a big frustration on our part as far as the school. Nikki's done a great job in keeping on and trying to get them, to respond in a timely manner. I know they're overwhelmed, we've already said that, but it's still a frustration on our part, okay? The access.
So potentially we could talk to her boss, Wayne Couch.
You could if you could find her. I have talked to him, he joined one Zoom meeting since last spring. He doesn't, well, let me put it this way, if he's making the decisions, maybe he's making the decisions and telling Amanda, I don't know. All we hear from though is Amanda Brown, and I will give it to her. She's probably doing the best she can. I mean, she's overwhelmed. I do think that when she said that this is from state guidance, I think what happens, and this is another frustration, is maybe county health around the state call the state, give them a situation, and whoever they talk to, and it's different people, I get the impression. Then they bring up the situation, they tell them what to do, and she passes it back to us. I don't see that there is consistency across the state. I mean, from what I can tell, it's hard to figure out consistency here, to be honest. But, I think everybody's pretty frustrated, and we're willing to do whatever. And, that's a good point you make. If they call and tell us, we need to, we push back some, but I mean, maybe we need to push back more,
I'm not asking for divisive, bickering, but I do think patrons of the kids, once the rumor gets out Friday, I think it's very important that you as a board and as a superintendent get something out and say, don't rely on.
We didn't know what it was.
We can do better.
Game's canceled.
We can do better on communication. I certainly get that. But what happened was we made the decision that for consistency, coming from Nikki would be good, because then it's using the form letter that Carbon County Health gave us. She emailed using Power School email addresses. I don't know how current all of those addresses are, but that could have been the mix. We'll work on that.
And they did some changing today, which is good. Yeah. But I mean, James, did you just say that you didn't know?
No, Friday, I get a call, the game's canceled, no reason.
So
I just assume it's roads.
Nikki tells me.
Because of high wind warnings. My wife got one later.
Like at 8 o'clock that night. I did.
Well, listen, she spent hours getting those emails out because they're separate emails with different names. I mean, it's not something that can happen in 20, 30 minutes. Now, but again, we can look at that. If we want to divide it out and let various people call people, we can do that. We were just trying to be consistent that everybody got the same information from the same form letter.
You can see the frustration. You're frustrated with the health department for not being that communicative. So we have parents in the same boat. I knew it might have been 9:30. Nikki tells me specifically this whole team was quarantined. So that came from her, which I have to believe came from the health department. Yeah. When that comes out, hence Friday night, the best way that I know how to mass relate to people is I put the cancellation of games on Facebook, but at the bottom I said Carbon schools, or I think I might have said Saratoga schools, will be open Monday morning, because I had people calling us, Heather's having people, oh my gosh, the kids aren't going to school, and it's just kind of mass chaos.
Well, if nothing else, we could put out and say you will be receiving an actual letter. I mean, we could certainly get.
I think anything would be helpful for people. We all know the level of anxiety we're feeling from this, because everyone has this idea, and it's starting to come true. Which I sat the very first day of school with all of our sports teams and said, look, I hear all you guys and parents saying we get one positive case, everything's shutting down. And I said in front of everybody, that is not the case. So now we're getting this mass anxiety that we don't have any positive, but we have an exposure. So, what I did it do any good? It probably didn't, but it's the only way I didn't feel like I should contact people individually or specifically and say, by the way, your daughter is quarantined. I think it would have been better for parents to get something from the school stating, hey, you know, even if you didn't say, we don't know exactly, but this is what's coming. School's open Monday morning.
Well, we all live and learn. I mean, our intention was to let it all come out on the same form. Now we look back and say, hey, that took a while, so maybe there's a better way.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying is we move forward. Everything's new and nobody has a blame here. So the last thing I'd just like to relay, and if anybody else wants to talk, is I also have a direct email I sent to Ron Laird, who is the commissioner of WASA, and I, as best I could, relay the information that I could in terms of, hey, we played this game on Tuesday. On Thursday, we got a call from the opposing school. They had a positive case. Friday morning, our whole team was quarantined. Do you know of anything like this taking place in the state? And his quote, first sentence was, not at this time. So I would be a little bit cautious of letting, I'm not saying Amanda Brown is coming out with false information, but I have proof from WASA and proof from multiple schools stating we have kids that are positive, teams are still playing. Okay, thank you guys for listening. It's all new. We all just have to do the best we can. We want kids in school, and that's all I'm advocating for. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment?
I'm Mandy Moon. I'm the girls' middle school basketball coach. I just want to let you all know that I'm more than willing to put in the time to go through any film that there is. I have the books. Actually, I've been looking through that. Going through a little bit of it as we sat here. I'm willing to put in the time so that a lot of the girls can go back to school, as that is most important. And more importantly, also, if these kids don't have any extracurricular activities to look forward to, a lot of them don't even want to go to school. So extracurricular activities are important to them as well, and I'd like to keep that going. So if there is something that can be put in place, such as parents that don't want their kids exposed, keep them home. Parents that are willing to let their children play, sign waivers, and I don't know if that's something that's already in place. Something like that. And these are just suggestions, but I know my kid's already graduated, but if he did not have anything to look forward to after sports or after school, he wouldn't have gone to school. So these kids need something to do too after school. School is most important, but sports are really important too. So I'm willing to do whatever is needed to go through and find out which girls are more at risk, and whatever else you may need, I'll do. So
We'll talk to Nikki in the morning and see if we can get the name, and then
Okay.
we'll call you or go from there, or whoever has the book. You said you had the book.
I do.
You don't even have to have the name, just find out when she played and how much she played.
Well,
Hey, there's no HIPAA violations there.
I know there's 9 girls on the Rollins team that played in both games. So that narrowed
Meredith's
it down.
nine.
So.
Yeah, they told us 2 games though. They told us she played on the B and A team.
Yeah.
Fine, but is that not in the records? When you check in, when you check out?
There are
No,
9
that's what she
people
just
though
said.
that played that.
I'm sure they're
What
more
I'm
than
saying though
likely.
is how many positives are we talking about from the opposing team? One. Okay, so when did she play in the games?
You mean
Look
without
at
the
our
name?
records and cross-reference that.
And they're most likely to give us that, and when they've asked. in the
Then you
past-
don't have to have a name involved.
We actually,
Well, we don't have to.
Okay.
We don't have to know that information.
Amanda said she thought they would probably volunteer the name, if not just the number.
On that one, on that one.
Yeah, on this.
She said most have been able, that when they've asked them, they said yes, they can share it. So we'll see. We'll go from it tomorrow morning.
Okay, anybody else want to comment? Josh?
So just, I think everyone knows me, but Joshua Wood, Saratoga son. So just sort of a 1,000-foot view at this, as well as also the kids' sports are important to my industry as well. I mean, as a person who didn't like sports in high school, I look forward to every single season because it's fun to watch these kids. But trying to touch a little bit on what Bob said, with the contact tracing. I know Amanda Brown told the commissioners last week that she's been working with school nurses a lot more. But obviously, if there's concern about HIPAA violations, certainly I imagine it could be just the kid's number, and potentially the school nurses from one school and another school could probably work together with the ADs or the coaches on that stuff. Obviously, that information doesn't need to be public, but only available to those kids who were affected. One of the bigger things I was thinking though, in terms of messaging, I had people asking me what was going on with games over the weekend. Wasn't entirely sure. But speaking for myself, I know I've seen Bigfoot's Facebook page always, trying to get information out. More than happy to sort of send information out as soon as it's available, and any sort of confirmation on things, not only our Facebook page, we've got our Twitter page as well as our website as well to get information out. And always more than happy to help the school district in any particular case on getting information out, squashing as many rumors as possible, and helping keep people calm and collected. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk? Yeah.
I'm Chris Williams. I want to take just a second before I talk about this and introduce myself. Our family has brought several children to your school district this year, and we are thrilled with the opportunity and the job that you all are doing. As educators, as a board overseeing educators and administrators, we've been very happy here and thrilled with what you're doing. It's unfortunate that the first time I really get to sit down and visit with some of you is under these circumstances. But I do want to advocate for the kids. I want to advocate for maybe some of the kids that are being lost in this process. I like watching the sports. My daughter is a participant on the team, and that's enjoyable. I probably worry much more about the little boys in 6th grade who are being subjected to having a significant portion of their class out and not in class. It's going to take a heroic job by that teacher to keep those boys from getting bored, to be able to keep everybody on the right pace, to be able to move through. And so that being the case, you all hired a good teacher. I think she's capable of doing it, but it's going to take a lot of work. And I think sometimes we forget how this is affecting the rest of the school. That being the case, I do professionally get to deal with Carbon County Public Health a little bit as well. I have heard accurate things when you report that they said that they're backing off of their contact tracing and leaving that up to other entities like the school district. That's certainly not something that's traditionally been a school district responsibility. And I feel for you all being stuck all of a sudden with this new responsibility of how are you going to hunt down the contacts of some of the kids through whether it's extracurricular activities or actual school days. How are you going to be able to protect the other children, protect the community? And so I feel for you, and I'm grateful that you're willing to put forth the effort to do that. I would encourage you to make a significant investment there. These girls that are quarantined, if things don't change, are going to miss 8, 9, 10 school days. And that's a significant portion of the school year. And this will not be the last time we deal with this. We will see over the next 3 months more acceleration and more of this. And if we're going to lose 10 days for relatively low risk contact, although basketball is higher risk contact than football, basketball is higher risk contact than some other sports. Overall, it's a low risk, defined by the CDC, low risk of transmission event. And that being the case, to talk about taking 15, 18, 20 kids out for 7, 8, 10 school days each time it happens, I think is going to harm our kids quite a bit. And not just the kids who are taken out, but will harm their classmates because it's going to interrupt the whole flow. And you all know that. And I commend you because I know you know that because I see the good job you're doing already. But I'd encourage you to invest what needs to as far as some of that contract tracing goes. And instead of just allowing blanket reports of these are the 18 girls that we had on that team. Send out your letter to 18 girls. We've already seen that wasn't an accurate portrayal of the girls who have been affected. And I don't think the Carbon County Public Health has the facilities to go find out who those 18 girls are that are going to depend on the school. And it's not a typical school responsibility, but for the good of our kids, I would encourage and hope that you can devote the resources necessary to be able to do that accurate tracing. Because we're going to battle for a few more months. This is going to be a big challenge, and this won't be the last time that you're quarantining a group. Let's try to be as accurate and as efficient when we do that as possible. But thank you for what you do. I appreciate it greatly.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I would like to hear a little bit, I guess, from principals, if you don't mind, Mr. Johnson. Not forgetting about people, one of the other thing is staff issues, obviously quite a bit of staff here. So, you guys pipe up as you feel like. One of our concerns and the reasons we have quarantines is for staffing issues. We have more issues up north, trying to stay staffed than here. But, is that a concern? If this is low risk, is staff worried about it? If we say, all right, well, the kids just come back in the building, this is stupid. Well, how does that portray, and you guys are welcome to speak up to staff members that, we have to worry about kids, of course, but if we don't have teachers, they have no school either. So.
I'll just say first, and then Mr. Jennings can add, but, we have a very limited number of subs, and it's not just our staff that may have the COVID or being quarantined because of family. We just have regular sickness as well going on. And it is becoming more and more difficult to make sure we cover. We've had to have teachers cover classes, during their plan periods. We've swapped, subs that we've had, and I can cover with someone else, and Mr. Jennings needs it for a whole class period type thing. I don't know, and staff can speak up on, their concern as themselves and that, but as an administrator, my biggest worry is when we do have 2 or 3 or 4 staff members, not just from the COVID or from just regular sickness, how will we get covered? Because we can't join our classes like we used to do, put 2 first grade classes together now to cover for the day when we're trying to keep our cohorts and different groups spread apart. So far, knock on wood, we've been very lucky to get everything covered. But it's always back, Michelle's been helping me and we piece things together every week to make sure we can get things covered the way we need to. When I ran out of here from the last meeting, I was going through with Michelle, how are we going to get tomorrow? Because we just had 2 more staff members call and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it tomorrow because of this or this. We pieced it together. And just the extra workload, I think, when we had like this quarantining of our students, I didn't get anything done today. You ought to see my office. I have textbooks stacked of every pile. I had teachers coming in, bringing in assignments. It was a all-day work to just get this ready. And I know my staff did the same thing, trying to get things ready for the whole week to send home to do. So, I understand what our county health is doing. It does put a big burden on our staff as well it's best that they're in school. And I know we all want that. Let's find where it comes from, that type of thing. But I think them giving us some leeway, we just needed a little time. I think if we had, the 1 day or 2 days that we could do this checking through books and things like that, maybe we're only getting things for 5 or 6 girls instead of 17 right now. But any of the staff have anything that they want to add?
I guess I've got a comment, as far as how fast we can get results back for, I mean, these symptoms are the same as the common cold or the flu. My son and my wife were both sick last weekend. They went in to Dr. Williams on Monday. We didn't get results till Thursday. I went to school. I didn't, isolate at home, but maybe I should have. So knowing a quick way to get results as a staff member and students, and nothing against Dr. Williams, I felt confident that they did not have it. But again, I could have missed 4 days waiting on results.
And that has affected several of our campuses so far. We'll have someone that has a symptom and they go take a test and it takes 4 or 5 days. They're at home until they get the test back, especially if they have a symptom, which is right.
So that would be something, I mean, you see TV that professional athletes are tested like every other hour, it seems like, but yet you're talking educators that can't get results to know, should I really be at school or not? I mean, because I was in that situation last week.
I'm Carly Grubb, and my girls are quarantined right now. I did take them to our pediatrician in Laramie, and he has the rapid test. We had our negative results in 15 minutes.
And
So
we
they're-
heard some of that used to happen here at one of the clinics in town. I can't remember where, but now it seems like people are having a harder time finding a quick result, because we had a couple of people that went to a Laramie, must not have been that one. And that's the one that took 4 days they were out.
Right, and my pediatrician did share with us, we see, with, Dr. Kleppinger at Laramie Pediatrics, and he said that it was a big investment for his practice, but he was willing to do that so that kids can know faster and parents can have that, peace of mind.
Yeah, and staff too, because
Staff too, yeah.
if they're being at home and they don't have to be at home, we're hanging by a thread every so often. If we're just lucky that staff has staggered enough. I mean, up north right now, we're, secretaries are serving lunch. We're just covering, we're making it, but it's not been easy.
And I do have a question regarding, the leeway we have with the Department of Health. If they have a negative result, is there a way that as a district, we can work to get those negative results back into the classroom? I'm not so concerned about sports. I mean, my girls are disappointed, but having them in person in the classroom is a lot better for them than it is to have them at home.
Here's what they've told us so far, and I think she talked a little bit about this. The 14-day quarantine, if they have determined to have a direct or close exposure, a negative test, and doctor can correct me, a negative test will not release them to come back. They have to stay out the 14 period. Where a rapid test could help though is if there's not a known contact, and if somebody just has some symptoms, then they can go and get the test and it's negative, then they're free to come back.
Okay.
So we're talking 2 different situations. Now, that's what I've been told.
You're correct. There's quarantine for people who have possible exposure, and you can't touch your way out of quarantine because there's up to 14 days for your illness to actually come about after you've been exposed. If you're sick, we can very quickly find out if you have COVID or not. But if you're quarantined because of exposure, you can't touch your way out of a quarantine. You can out of isolation from illness, but not out of quarantine.
Are those rapid tests being seen as valid enough to proceed forward? Because I know there's quite a bit of error that can happen within those rapid tests. Some places where they do rapid testing for their employees, they're double checked by the state lab, the ones that take 4 or 5 days to get back. You've seen positive cases, and then the state will test and actually say it's negative. But since they tested positive on the rapid one, they're still at home quarantine. So you have that working against you too. So I don't know if the rapid test, what I'm asking is somebody out there or here, are those rapid tests acceptable enough? Because they do have quite a bit more error, than what maybe the 4 or 5 day ones do take. So I don't know if that's been something that. that's been brought up anywhere else.
You can do a saliva, which is a more of a rapid test through the state of Wyoming, the ones that the governor paid for. And they're actually accepted to go to Hawaii, which Hawaii has the most stringent rules on traveling there. And that is the actual mail-in test you can do here. And my friend did it and they had the results back in less than 72 hours. So that's another option, and they're free right now. You just go to, I think it's called online or something, you can look it up, and they mail it to you, email
I've heard
it
of
back in,
those.
so.
I'm talking about like the 15.
So to get back on track to this situation, any other comments? Anything else to add, Greg?
Didn't mind speaking up.
No, I just don't want you to feel like, I mean, I think, Darren, sorry, yeah.
You know, you asked about staff. I do think, you know, like Dr. Copeland said, we're kind of hanging on. You know, we spend a lot of Sundays trying to figure out how we're going to cover classes for next week. And I think something that could really help out that we can talk about is just having some subs available that in our buildings that are more consistent. And I think, you know, we can talk about that maybe at our admin meeting, or if we're going to spend the same amount of money, we know we're going to use the subs, having those same people that are familiar with our procedures and our kids and everything, why not right now having them come to school on, you know, Monday morning ready to, you know, to take off and ready to sub. I think that's one solution, but I think we've seen a lot of people step up, whether it's our secretaries, our teachers that are calling parents, that are running supplies, that are giving me supplies to take kids on quarantine. So I think we've seen a lot of good things come out about it. You know, a lot of people are just making this working. We're going to get through it. I think shows a lot about our staff and about our community.
Right, and I think one of the reasons we have the quarantine is to protect the staff too.
Right.
We're not exposing quite a few teachers unknowingly. So.
I think one of the other frustrations that JD you get to deal with today was crazy parents like me that are like, hey, my kid's out and she needs to do her homework and, you know, stay up with classes. Basketball just all of a sudden faded into the back and nothing. So if I mean, I know this is a trial run and we learn, and I talked to Michelle a long time about it today, but if we have something in place where we know exactly what we're gonna do, and like Greg said, let's try to keep these quarantines of these whole teams to an absolute minimum if we can, you know, so you're not in that situation again. Because I know like Michelle's like, well, I'll call you when we get all of your daughter's stuff out. Well, my son's right there in the high school, so just send it home with it. So she's having to make notes from every parent of 17 girls, what she's supposed to do with it. It's insane. We've just caused ourselves more trouble by not maybe just pushing back just a tiny bit. And I'm, you know, I've been kind of that person on this board, and Dr. Copeland knows I've pushed back a lot on this over the last 3 days, a lot. Because I think that the classroom time and the school time that these kids are missing is insane. It's absolutely changing the education that my kid is getting. You know, it is, let's be honest. So it's a problem, and we need to keep it to a minimum if we can. You know, and if we get statewide orders next week, I don't know. But while we're open and we're going, we need to keep it to an absolute minimum.
So what's your, I mean, so I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So what steps are you?
Well, I'm just.
Do you have a suggestion or?
No, I think, you know, JD, if we have an idea of, you know, we're gonna have some big quarantines to kind of put a plan in place with teachers. Here's what we're gonna do first thing in the morning. You know, or maybe an e-notes thing out to parents that says, we're getting this all together for you. Please contact the school at this time, you know, especially it's sports that happens on weekends usually. So you have Monday morning to go crazy because I'm asking all these parents, like, have you heard from the school? I texted Dr. Copeland 100 times, I'm pretty sure. And, you know, none of us knew. So like Greg says, we need to get an e-notes thing out that not only says your daughter's being quarantined or your son or whatever is being quarantined, but this is when we're going to have your stuff available for them to do online school, because I didn't know. And I'm on the board, you know. So I can imagine the frustrations of parents that didn't know, don't have any of that kind of information available to them. And don't know who to call besides besides you, and on the weekends, that's tough. So, and that's not your fault, this is what it is, but that would be my suggestion to kind of get that in place. And then if we can get volunteers, parents, stats takers, whatever, to do this contact tracing for these sports or activities, whatever it's, let's do that. Let's try to encourage as many of our parents, et cetera, to help in that situation.
I just want to add, just as a staff member, and also I was at the Christmas bazaar on Saturday when all this was kind of hitting, and I had parent after parent come up to me and just be like, I will do whatever it takes to keep my kid in school and playing sport, so I think we can utilize, I don't know what, you obviously have to work through all the regulations and everything like that, but I know as a staff member, and as a coach, I will put in whatever time I need to, and I think there are quite a lot of parents out there too that, like I say, I had multiple parents come up to me, whatever I have to do.
Yeah, and I do think that we can certainly take advantage because we have such good support like that. And maybe the thing is, and we have an 18 meeting Wednesday, but maybe the thing is to have just a group of parents on a list that we can call at the last minute. And if we have 8 names, even if 4 can come up and go through this or whatever, now that we've been given a little more of this flexibility. One thing I would say is I think we've been very fortunate as a district. We've had 3 student positives district-wide, 3, and that's very low when you're looking across the state. So we kind of got lulled into thinking, well, we're having issues with staff, but we're really lucky with the kids. It's working out. And so, we do need to be a little more proactive in having some procedures in place. I totally agree with that. And we'll definitely work on that. But I appreciate all the people that say they will come up and help and support. I mean, we know we have people that will do that, so we just need to take advantage.
Well, I think as far as the contact tracing, from a coaching standpoint, we'd be willing to do that. We'll go back to the video. We can tell you how many minutes these kids played, who was in contact, who was guarding this person, or who was wrestling this person.
Well,
and we're willing to do that, knowing that we have that
Sure.
flexibility at a local level. Because I think that was our frustration, that this was coming from state or county, and you're shutting down our whole team without even giving us any chance.
We just heard it
to dig in.
3 o'clock that we had given a little bit of that.
Well, I think we can try that and we can pursue that. And once we have those names of the players that are below the threshold, to submit them and see what happens.
Some of it's going to be a little bit of time because what she did say is that the whole team will be quarantined until we can do that. So that may take a day or a morning or a
Which is
weekend.
much better than 2 weeks.
Right.
But everybody may get a quarantine at first, and then we back off of that and release them. That's what she said also.
Yeah. And I think to keep in
Which has already
mind,
happened with-
we're all,
right?
most of us are concerned with the Saratoga team. We have 2 Hannah teams, so let's share this.
But the
information
one
with them.
Hannah team has positive, but Greg, you said whole teams aren't being quarantined for positive anywhere else?
Outside of Carbon County, the other school districts that I have been in contact with, which range from Evanston to Cheyenne, which obviously isn't every one, but multiple ones all along the way. Every one of them told me that if they have a positive on a team, it is an isolation of that student, but the team 1 is still going. Multiple, then they look at quarantining the whole team. But for one positive, nobody told me that they shut down the entire team for that.
And I mean, our situation is we live in this county, so we're going to have to work with our people. But I mean, when I've been in superintendent meetings, it's a little bit of a patchwork all across the state. And there's a lot of concern about basketball season, I'll be honest with you, among all the superintendents. I mean, how in the heck that's going to work?
Okay. Thank you. Any more comment on this issue before we move on? We do appreciate you guys coming and sharing your concerns. As Katie said, I'm on the board, obviously. I didn't know about it till late Friday, and this game's canceled. Okay.
Well, if I could maybe say something. I think if we come up with a plan or a strategy as a district and specifically for activities, to minimize the loss of days and to also minimize the number of students. And that's one issue, but we need to come up with a plan. And if we do that, then we can tweak it as the season goes along, as we see issues come up or something like that. But at least we have something for you coaches, for the parents, for everybody to look at that's, in writing. So, and then the other problem that we need to probably address is to have timely communication channels. And I say timely because if we do it too rapidly, then we'll have to, backtrack or something, but just timely to keep the rumors to a minimum. And I thank you, Josh, for providing, the, what do I want to say, the assets that the Saratoga Sun has. Thank you. But those are the two things I think that we really need to address, and I'll leave it up to the administration and everybody to work this out.
Thanks, Joe. That was a good summary. Appreciate that.
And I would just add as a coach that, yeah, I'm willing to do whatever documentation for games, keeping track of minutes, JV, varsity, practices. I need to, whatever I need to do as a coach to document it, just tell me, I'll do it.
Thanks, Jason.
Jay. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
We're gonna move along on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Give me a second. Seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Carries. Section 11A, treasurer's report. Well,
Mr. Chairman, your balance in your general fund was $3,866,918.25. You see there the revenue and expenses and bills and payroll that were paid during the month of October. Your major receipts and your general fund monies as they're invested at the various rates and maturities. Interest rates are dropping dramatically, so you'll start seeing those rates going down even farther next month as things mature. I will note that the balance is down about between $500,000 and $600,000 from where it was at this point last year. And that's due to the fact that our foundation payments are lower because we're expecting better tax revenues. So hopefully next month when we get our December revenue, we'll be in better shape. Any questions regarding the general fund? On your other funds, you can see the balances there on your grants as they stand at the end of October. You see the comparison between October of 19 and October of 2020 payroll. And I looked at the difference, and you have more staff that we're paying this year than we were last year. We have 2 added special ed teachers. We have some more sped aides that are being paid out of 6B, what's included in this. We have a principal, so we have an assistant principal, yada, yada, yada. So your scholarships, there were no new scholarships issued during the month of October. And you can see the fund balances in the remaining accounts. Do you have any questions regarding the other funds that you have?
no, just a comment on the payroll, and this was this way last month, so if we're going, 50K a month higher than last year, that's 600K a year.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah.
health insurance, there's a lot of things go into it, but.
Yeah. And part of it is, like I said, sped. So you'll see that in 401 get reimbursed. And some of it is coming out of grants. You'll see some of it, Title I and 6B are paying a little bit more. But Title I, you're supplementing quite a bit too.
So it won't totally erode our carryover as
Carryover,
much as the 600K.
Correct.
Immediately.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And your summaries kind of reflect the same. Expense and revenue summary.
Okay. Item 11B, bills.
Mr. Chair, the Bills Committee, we met with Sally and she answered our questions. So I make the motion that we approve the following bills. General Fund, $304,733.58. Federal Fund, $69,825.50. Major maintenance, 79,377.21. Hot lunch fund, 45,903.03. Encampment activity account, 1,677.41. The HEMHS activity account, 2,884.81. Saratoga Schools activity account, 5,689.74, for a grand total of $510,091.28.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the bills in a grand total of $510,091.28. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Okay, next month's bills will be Joe, Ernie George, and Karen Condon. Okay, item 12A is review board governance leadership tab 2.11 regarding facilities, transportation, and food services. Any questions, comments, concerns? One of the things without a facilities person that we've had in the past, it seems like we still have quite a few facility projects going on, and they're happening and mostly getting done. So we appreciate you doing that as well.
With some delay.
Yeah,
Due to COVID.
it's happening. Might be funner to go swing a hammer sometimes than it is to, yeah, although swinging a hammer is not really what you do. Okay, policies, JJ, just a review.
The only one on there is that JEB that we need revision.
Anything on the student volunteers for school public service? Okay. Next would be policy JL, student solicitations. The issues. Policy JN.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I wonder if we should possibly add to the list in the first paragraph, electronic devices.
Yeah, with Chromebooks, laptops, or electronic devices, probably is better. Just way to put that. It doesn't need change. So, we need to make a motion for that, or bring it back next time with revision, or can we just move it right now and change the policy on you can change it the way.
On JN.
The way your agenda reads.
We can change it now.
Okay.
All right, Joe.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we add to the list in paragraph 1, electronic devices.
Second.
Instead of rental fees, textbooks, workbooks, and electronic devices. It has been moved and seconded. Because I think on the third paragraph, it already says equipment on the page stuff, so it's probably covered. It's been moved and seconded to add electronic devices to paragraph 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Joe. Policy JEB, the enrollment age is up was revised.
We just forgot to put, or we forgot to add one of the actual secretaries actually caught this, but just the sentence, proof of birth in the form of a birth certificate or other acceptable documents will require additional enrollment. Some documentation.
All right, you need a motion to accept this one of the policy.
Mr. Chair, I move that we add that sentence to the policy.
It is moved and seconded to amend policy JEB, enrollment age to reflect the edits. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Thank you. Both of these reports are good. You got anything this time?
Just a little, our last meeting was October 27th. We just worked on revising policies to reflect the DSS regulations and worked on the director evaluation, which was through the same time as our superintendent evaluation. Sue Bellish is working on compiling all of that for Region 5 OC. And then one real high spot that I just wanted to share with everyone. I'm not sure I can really explain it very good, but they applied for a grant through BJA Stop School Violence Program, and says on behalf of Attorney General Barr, it is my pleasure to inform you that the Office of Justice Programs has approved the application submitted by WDE through Region 5 BOCES for an award under the funding opportunity entitled Stop School Violence. States threat assessment intervention teams and or technology, anonymous reporting acts, etc. The approved award amount is $2 million. So they're pretty excited about that. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Okay, oath of office for those of you that were recently elected. And Nick had come all the way for this meeting to get the oath of office and to hear what's going on, and it's already elected, so you can't really back out. Okay, that was super fun. All right, Dana.
All right, so we just need you all, for Nick and Georgia and Joe to stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of Wyoming.
and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming.
That I have not knowingly violated any law related to my election or appointment.
That I have not knowingly violated any law related to my election or appointment.
Or caused it to be done by others.
Or caused it to be done by others.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
And then if you will sign your oath and get that to me, and I will notarize that.
Congratulations.
Welcome, Nick.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, item 12E, board member comments. We'll go this way this time. Casey. Are you ready?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to put one thing out there for you guys to remember and to know I've been ranting like a maniac for the past 3 days. That we're in the education business and not the healthcare business. So we're here and I tear up because I watched my kid cry for 2 hours over this. But we're here to support kids and teachers, not to support healthcare, even in a pandemic. So if we can push back, we push back. And that's why I've been pushing back all weekend. Is we're here. If we're not supporting these people, if we're not supporting our kids and our staff and our admin, who is? I mean, so keep that in your brains as we move forward. And when we have a whole room full of parents that want to come talk. Thanks. That's all I got.
All right, thank you. I really appreciated Mike's presentation, and that we don't often, at least I don't often think about what all the staff has to do and how their jobs have changed, and you know, teachers washing the desks between classes, and the custodial staff, you know, disinfecting the table. I think I got that right, before and after they eat, which, you know, interesting, just a lot of stuff that goes into that. You know, again, I don't like my kid being out of school. I don't enjoy that. I also don't want to risk staffing a school, you know, in fact, a lot of teachers inadvertently, and then my other two boys are out of school. So, it's not a simple, this is how it's gonna be thing, and it's tough for everybody, and I appreciate Casey and Karen bringing this up to have more discussion and getting people here and having an open comment thing. So I do appreciate both of you efforts to do that.
Okay, the other two have already said, but I especially want to say thank you, Mike, for the time you spent on the board, and we're going to miss you. And you have brought a special perspective to this board, and thank you. I also want to say welcome to Nick, and we're looking forward to what you have to bring to the board. And thank you for running and taking this high-paying job. But the payment is actually in the rewards when you actually get to visit the schools sometimes and see the kids. And it's just, that's the reward. So that's it for me. Thank you.
I also wanted to thank Mr. Erickson and also Mr. Priest. It was nice to have those presentations back, so appreciate that. It's good to know what's going on in the school and whatnot. Also wanted to thank Mike for his time on the board and congratulate Nick and look forward to working with you. I know Jerry Paxton's already left, but I wanted to thank him for coming today. I thought that was really helpful and just good to hear from him. Thank Joe for being our WSBA delegate again this year. So, congratulations to Grant and Grady Bartlett and the boys and girls cross country teams. I'm really excited to see that. But thank you to all the parents who came tonight. It was really great to hear from them. I don't have a kid, one of the few doesn't have a kid in a girl in 6th grade or 7th grade. But so it's good to know what's going on and to have that perspective. I had no idea that this was all going on until I looked at my emails today. But I also agree that we do need to maybe question a little bit more of what public health is telling us, especially hearing from our AD that there are other school districts that aren't necessarily going through the same thing. So I think it's in our best interest to ask questions and see what we can do there. Also appreciated Mr. Williams's comment as to like, this isn't the worst, and we're kind of setting a precedent in how we're handling these situations that are what I feel like to be low risk. So I just think, that kind of made me take a different thought process along. So that's all I have. Thank you.
So like James said, Mike's presentation was good, and we don't always think about all of the support staff that are doing all this extra stuff. I mean, we know what the kids are going through, we know what the teachers are going through, the admin, but I appreciate all the extra efforts that everyone is putting in, including parents and students. I know it's really hard in all of the stuff that we deal with every day, but because we always hear the negative, but I think if we can just look at the positives, it might make things a little bit easier. We're so fortunate where we live. The support that we have from parents, community members, everyone, and our kids are in school and they are able to participate in some athletics. We're able to go to work. My door is open to whoever wants to come in. We don't have to wear masks yet, but Colorado shut down. You go to Winter, you have to wear a mask everywhere. We just need to look at how fortunate we are. We're fortunate to live where we live. We're fortunate to have the people here that we have, the kids that we have. And I think we just need to continue learning from these situations, because all of this, like we said, is so new. And we learned a lot from Amanda, I think, tonight, in that we can push back. We just didn't know that. And now we know. And I think we can get more creative and we can support our kids even more than we already are. Mike.
Well, yes, this is my last meeting, unfortunately, with you guys. And, I just want to thank the board for allowing me to spend a short amount of time here, learning a lot of things that I will, take forward with me through life. And also made me realize how much work a board member on this kind of a board actually does and that's kind of the reason why I think I'm trying to step back with the arrival of my daughter, and then, professionally in my career, I'm not quite where I am, and so I don't know where the next few years are going to take me. So those uncertainties, I decided to step back. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. I thoroughly did. One thing I will tell Nick is it does take a lot of time to kind of get the grasp of things and to learn how the gears work in here. So I was just starting to get there. And so that's why I'm kind of sad to take a step back, but I feel like that's best for me. You guys are really great bunch of people working really hard to ensure our staff and our students are where they need to be. And because of that, I feel like we're still in good hands and I have nothing to worry about. You guys are doing a really good job. We kind of echo off of what Georgia said. She's made a great point. We are very fortunate to be where we are as a school. California's talking about shutting school down completely for the entire rest of the year, just starting sometime next year. So there's a lot of kids around the United States that are in the same situation as we are. I feel like we are in a very good spot compared to a lot of other people. So just realizing the positives and then continue to share a little bit of grace. And yeah, these things come up. We just gotta kind of deal with them. Like, when you tell Carbon, public health, well, can you give us 2 or 3 days to review tape? No, there's somebody positive. And we just didn't know things, so you kind of just go with it. As we go with it, we're gonna learn. So again, just show a little grace, look at the positives. We'll make it through this. And thank you for letting me be a part of this team. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for all your hard work, Mike. Thank you to all the staff, everybody. Good luck in dealing with us. It's been a long weekend. It'll be nice to try to work to keep these kids in school and keep everything going. I'm willing to help however. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Karen.
I talked longer.
Joe has something else he wants to add.
Robin, thank you.
Yeah.
You already lost your turn. You don't get to go again.
That's all right.
Everybody, thank you.
All right, so I didn't totally skip Mike. We got, we as in Jim, or had somebody else get, appreciation plaque for Mike.
Oh,
Dana. Yeah, that's how it works around here.
Dana.
Wow, so anyways, I don't know how this works.
No.
So Mike, we do appreciate your time as a
Wow.
board member, and I'll give you the box back so you can don't stress
Oh my
anyway home.
goodness,
So we appreciate your perspective being different, and being married to a staff member, it was a lot easier for you to hear concerns at home, and you had to play well trying to be a board member and a good husband and now a father, and that's life. We pay about 5 more kids and 9 pages. All that. We're glad you came today in person. We haven't seen you for a bit, and appreciate obviously with the little one, you've got to be pretty cautious and everything. And so just thanks for your perspective on the board. And one of the key things that you've seen, and we all see is that Nick, is that everybody has a different perspective. And obviously Casey's real passionate about that, and that's great. And then some other issue somebody else is going to be. And so that's why it takes 9 people thinking about different things. And I appreciate that Mike always had a different perspective and cared about the staff and making sure things were communicated to them. And thank you for bringing that.
You betcha. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, item 13A, we're going to go into executive session to discuss personnel issues considered confidential to law which is basically the superintendent evaluation.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
It's moved and seconded that we go into executive session to discuss personnel issues considered confidential by law. Conduct a superintendent evaluation. There will be no action taken after the executive. All in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Vote. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want the broadcast to continue for when you come back?
The only thing we'll do, I'll just mention this here, is to set the meeting date, which will be Thursday, December 17th. It's scheduled for here at the Central Administration Office. We may consider asking to change the location, if perhaps it's been suggested we try to do it at the community center. But I don't think we have to do that this time. So we can email that back and forth. It'll be December 17th at 5 p.m. So I don't think so.
Okay.
Now that I got that on record.
Okay.
Everybody wants to know. Okay, I will have a executive session in here.